Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us in this week's episode of the Healthy Futures podcast. Today, I am joined by Anthony Seaman. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started, could you give us a little introduction about you for everyone listening?
Of course, Tom. Hi, Tom. I hope you're well. I hope everyone else out there is well in this interesting time. As Tom says, my name is Anthony Seaman. I'm a bit of everything, really. I wear many hats. I am from, we're talking 15 years ago, trained as a primary school teacher and took a real keen interest in physical education, leading in physical education, school sport, physical activity. And I have been leading PE across various different schools in Greater London and in Essex. And over the past 5 years, I've taken that role slightly differently to be more focused within delivery in specific schools, developing PE and school sport as an active Essex education practitioner, and work as an advisor and consultant for various different organisations, essentially supporting in the development of PE and school sport. So they may mean that I'm delivering training, supporting in team teaching, or doing such type work with yourself, Tom. So yeah. It's really good to be involved in this, which I think is a really, really exciting process as well. Good.
No, so I didn't realise you started as an actual primary school teacher, though, Anthony, back when?
Yeah. Well, it was, as I say, around about 15 years ago, and I was labelled and tagged, and I'm sure people will see that out there as the guy in the primary school.
PE or computing.
Yes, yeah. But absolutely loved it. And my passion really was working with the younger ones. So Key Stage 1 and early years. And a lot of my work since then has been geared towards, when we're talking physical education, developing those fundamental skills really with our young people. So for me, that was where, my real enjoyment for things started. So I've still always got that I jump into. So I'm in and out classes, developing PE, but also my Tuesday this week, I was delivering some English and some maths and some RE with some of the older pupils as well at my school.
So well versed and keeps your hand in there, don't it? I think it's important to jump back in every now and then just to make sure you haven't forgot it, really.
Definitely. Well, especially we spoke earlier, didn't we? Especially after such a break, when I think we all came back. I remember the days of going back to school as a young lad and forgetting how to write, and that pencil hurting my fingers. And it's a bit like that, isn't it? It's a little bit like that in any profession, probably. And you stand in front of class and think, can I do this still? Have I forgotten my craft? But I think especially in this current time, we're learning to adapt, right? And we're learning to make things work.
Definitely. That first Sunday when we were going back on the Monday, I was sat there thinking, I can't remember what I do. I can't remember how this goes on. But I think everyone took comfort in the fact that nobody knew what they were doing. Everyone had had the same time off. Well, not time off. I don't do it. Not time off.
Well, time away, wasn't it? It was
time away. That's the one. Yeah.
Time away from the norm. And as you say, various schools had various different experiences. Just working, locally myself, I work with schools specifically, 4 of them, and the experience that they had was vastly different. To having various different pupils in and on a regular basis, some not. And even now, I think we're seeing vastly different experiences to how schools are going about their business. But it's great to kind of, in a strange way, it's great to be involved in this. It's great to be part of this rejuvenation and opportunity to, I think, celebrate and share what our subject is all about, really. So I'm sure we'll go on to that deeper a little bit later.
Yeah, no, that sort of brings us into what we're going to talk about today, though, really, I suppose, in terms of talking about what PE is in the current climate and what the importance of it is and how we can deliver PE at the moment. I mean, I know there was so much, I suppose, anxiety around going back and delivering PE with social distancing and all the guidelines we've got to follow. But I suppose if we're thinking about PE in the current climate and we think about the importance of it, especially from like an holistic approach, I think PE should be at the forefront of lots of schools, if not every school at the moment, just because of the benefits it can bring to the pupils.
Hugely important. And I think within my role at Active Essex, we recently heard a comment that came through in relation to a school that was saying that physical activity levels or physical education time is dropping. And that may be the case in some settings, but certainly through my experience, I think we're seeing schools really embrace this and actually say, what did we learn during this COVID time? What do we know about physical activity wholly? And really, as soon as we are being kind of focused on that area and starting to realize the importance of it ourselves, I think actually quite a lot of schools are developing practice to an even better level of what it was, say pre-March when all of these changes started to happen. But I think the schools knew beforehand. I think schools knew beforehand that, you know, the social aspects that were there, and I think Sport England's figures will tell you recently from some of their survey work that it's something like 59% of pupils will say that they feel that they can make friends better through physical education and school sport, and pupils will say they feel happier. I think it's around about 3/4 of pupils will say they feel happier or more confident.
It's huge numbers, isn't it? It's huge numbers. It's massive statistics.
And as much as, you know, I think it's easy to pull out figures and cold data meaning nothing, but actually when you're on the ground seeing that, it brings it to life. Really, really does. And I think even the person, the teacher, the school staff member that maybe previously would have said, I don't have enough time in my day to squeeze this in, or it's not on my priority list. I think there's certainly enough criteria now to share, well, this is why we do it. It's for the well-being wholly. It's for the well-being, the mental well-being, the physical well-being of our young people, for the confidence of our young people. And I always say to people when I'm delivering any sort of CPD, which isn't focused with PE leads, I always say, well, how do you make this fit into your school improvement plan? How do you make this part of your long-term agenda? And I think it is now. It just has to be.
Definitely.
Beyond the physical as well, you know, the side of it that we do know about, you know, emotional well-being, anxiety, stress levels, that I know, you know, as an adult, that I certainly like to feel like I'm well balanced in how I go about my business. This is a time that's challenged us all.
Definitely.
So for various different backgrounds of young people with various different experiences, I think physical education, physical activity gives them a platform to start to say, I'll reintegrate. I've got an opportunity to reintegrate socially with my peers. I've got an opportunity to develop my thinking skills and my leadership skills within my friendship group. And it's not that stereotypical general view of physical education anymore. No. It doesn't need to be. It's not a bunch of kids playing rounders for the sake of it. It's not that. It really
purposeful. We've got an aim. We've got an objective.
Yeah. So purposeful.
I think it's what you said. I think you said it right at the very start. And I think this was talked about a lot during lockdown. I mean, the society as general of the world we go back into being different and hopefully being a better place. So I think if we think about it in a school point of view, hopefully PE is now, and I know me and you, we love PE, we understand the importance of PE, but ultimately it's the schools and the teachers who are delivering their classes who we want to convince, I suppose, the benefits of PE. So hopefully during this time, PE can come out and be viewed as this important subject that we all know it is.
We'd very much hope so. And I think you're right, Tom. I think when, you know, preaching to the converted is one thing, but being able to share that message to people that are maybe questioning the place of physical education is a slightly different challenge. But I do feel that this time completely has given some of those individuals a new way of thinking and a refreshed view. And I know for certain that as soon as Boris started telling us that we can get out and about during lockdown and we can go out for physical activity, for a lot of people that actually either reignited their enjoyment of physical activity or actually started that fire for the very first time. And I can think of numerous cases of adults and young people that are, or certainly were, physically more active during that period. And that tells you something, right? That tells you that we value it. We feel that it's important. We know that it physically for us is good. And we know for us mentally it's good. So building that into our curriculum as a meaningful tool, not something outside of maths and English that we feel we need to value because of certain people might have told us to, actually is a meaningful vehicle to develop those children's whole experience.
Definitely.
Totally.
Yeah, and like you said there, when it was peak lockdown or during that lockdown, it was physical activity that was pushed. Everyone was pushing physical activity, and it wasn't just the PE industry. It was from the government. It was from Boris. You know, every night it was pushing physical activity, and it just shows the importance that has. And I think, well, you said then about adults, when I'm stressed or whatever it might be, going for a run or going for a walk or playing football, it helps. It just, it's a lifelong skill, and I think embedding it as early as possible. And, the rise in mental health cases and things like that are, the stats everywhere around that sort of stuff, I think is so important. And especially given the current climate we find ourselves in from my point of view.
We're here now talking about it as two professionals that are involved in that industry, right? But I think there were and there still are lots of people that were outside of the know, that were maybe more knowledgeable about physical activity, but not physical education, that started those conversations. And Joe Wicks, as an example, was a huge advocate of physical activity in a real positive. And I know quite a lot of people within.
Oh, hold on there, Anthony, you'll be.
But I feel like quite a lot of people within our world saw that as a negative, and the nation's PE teacher was a label that was given to Joe Wicks, and maybe not the correct title, but certainly as a representation on a celebrity level of what physical activity is. Fantastic. If we start getting into the nuts and bolts of what physical education should look like, then we're in a different conversation indeed. But certainly, as actually, what do young people need? They need role models. What do young people need? They need people to support them in their process to develop those healthy lifestyle choices, right? And I think we found some of that in a positive way. It's kind of a bit of a funny time now, though, isn't it? Because you've got back into it. It's given us an opportunity to now feel it out, but what does it really look like in practice to people? I think you can go either way on it, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. I think just touching on the Joe Wicks thing slightly, and if we forget the name and whatever he called himself, I think ultimately part of what we do as what we do in our job is to get children active. And I think he had 1 million views on his first video, something like that, which is, regardless of what he called himself, to have that much engagement and to have that many children who otherwise would have been sat down inactive all day, he should be credited for, and an unbelievable achievement, really.
Indeed. And I think we can get too bogged down with the ins and outs of it all, but let's take the positives. And I think I'm certainly that way inclined, that actually, and the same can be said for this time. I've said this on numerous occasions. It's my soundbite that I've driven all the way through this, that there are barriers. There are huge barriers in our way, but do we see them as barriers, or do we try and use it as a platform? Do we say this is a platform to enhance our subject, enhance what it's all about, and actually share with maybe the non-believers, maybe the ones that were on the outside at the beginning saying, hang on a minute, it's a bit of fun in the afternoon that anyone can deliver, which can be quite a stereotypical generalized view in some settings, that actually maybe we utilize that as a platform to say, no, let's look at how this is done well. And all the figures in the world can tell you one thing, but when you're seeing smiles on faces and re-engaged pupils that are enjoying school in what is still a challenging time, then we know the place of our subject. We know it has a huge part, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's an important point as well. Like, we spoke about lockdown, but actually it's still difficult now for lots of people. People still can't see grandparents. They might be living separate from mum and dad, and I'm not too sure of the rules and all that sort of stuff. And they can't see the friends as they'd want to be, and they're going to school and they can't see a friend in year 4 and year 2. It's still a difficult time. So we're not out of it, out of the woods, if you like. So I think that importance of physical activity and PE needs to still keep being pushed and keep being at the priority for schools.
Agreed. And I think, coming back to the point I was making earlier, that there's always a line that feeds into what is the whole school development plan. What are we actually aiming for as a school? Because often we treat things in little boxes in a school setting, and we can say, this is our maths curriculum, this is our English curriculum, this is what we do for the whole child. And that isn't a box in itself. It completely filters through into actually what is your ethos as a school. And I know I work at a wonderful school locally, and lots of my work that I do through them comes from a drive from an SLT who believe in experiences, and it's all about positive, lifelong, remembering really good experiences within school, whether that be a trip that maybe we can't go on at the moment, or maybe that be just that one PE lesson that was just so exciting. And I think young people remember those, right? They don't remember learning how to throw the ball or catch the ball or to 100%. Do that written method in maths. They don't remember that when they're 25. They remember those special moments. And I feel like our subject's got that place. I know at the current time that's tricky. I know that there's many things in place, but I do think, working in and around those measures, we can be smart. We can make things work. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably my pet hate, if you like, of the perception of PE, that it is just, kids running about in the field for an hour, get them outside, I'll do a bit of PPA or whatever it is, and all the wider benefits that brings. But I think what you said then about the school, about creating the experiences, PE is an unbelievable subject to create them experiences and some of the lessons that you can put on and that do live in the memory, that are not just, like I say, just putting on rounders and thinking outside the box in terms of curriculum topics and not just sticking to the norm. I think can create them special experiences that children remember for lifelong.
And I think this is where our role within the school, whatever that may be, whether we are delivering physical education for 2 hours a week, whether we are jumping from school to school and supporting, or whether we're overseeing what happens in that curriculum. I think I deal with enough trainee teachers, and my first session that I ever do with them, we stand in a line and we talk about our feelings towards the subject area. And you can already see it, right? It's Marmite completely. Yeah. You've got a group down the end that say, loved it, football team, netball, hockey, swimming, loved that, and their secondary school or primary school PE experiences were that level, to the other end who said, wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Just wasn't sporty, or those stereotypical views that we're now at a point that we should be pushing away from. And it's our job completely now to say, really, our subject area can provide so much more, and it can provide wonderful experience for whatever your young person has in front of them, whether it's an anxiety around coming into school, whether it's special educational needs that they may be needing to deal with as well. There's a place for everyone within good quality, inclusive physical education. And I think at the moment, those barriers that we could see as making sure we're in our bubble, making sure that our equipment is cleansed on a regular basis, making sure that we don't use this and we don't do this, and we come into school in our kit. We can look at the negatives, right? And we can look at those negatives, but we can actually say, taking one of those as an example, the kit. I'm seeing kids walking into school in their school uniform, and I'm seeing kids running down the road with their parents in their PE kit, in their trainers. I'm seeing kids walking around the playground in their school kit, and I'm seeing children sprinting around that playground in their PE kit. It's some sort of subtle difference that it makes to our young people, and it's a huge thing. Someone needs to do a research topic on it. I challenge someone out there with a lot more expertise than me, certainly, to go and do a bit of research on it. But there's something very subtle in it. Pop your trainers on, and what difference it makes. We're seeing young people much more physically active. And I was at a school last week that they deliver an afternoon of physical education. So they go, they do a 40-minute activity, one after the other, 3 in a row, all across the afternoon. And then they've not seen that as enough now. So actually in the morning, that same group are then coming in and having their bubble activity in the mornings as a morning club as well. And you're seeing schools that go, you know what, this is their day specifically to really show that this is a special physical activity day, physical education day. And brilliant, what a way to enhance the mindset. And we can look at some of those key indicators of why we get our sport premium money, can't we? And say, what does this mean? What does that mean? And looking at raising the profile of PE, that's a huge example, isn't it?
Definitely.
Look at that. It's fantastic. And you can use that and say, well, beyond this time, when we're at a place when everything's all good, is that something we say we should be utilising? Is that something that we say we could do more of?
Definitely.
And that's what I think. This can be a platform, not a barrier.
It's a really interesting point about, I suppose, changing your mindset into, like you said there, about, okay, I've got to get, we've got all these barriers in place, that we've got to cleanse equipment, but actually let's turn that on its head and let's turn it as a positive. Come in peak it all day and you're active throughout the day, and then using that, as you say, as a catalyst, as a tool to then promote activity to the...
We all understand that PE isn't the only thing that goes on within a school, right? We've got to juggle. We've got to juggle, and we understand that. And we understand that, especially in leadership positions, there are key decisions that need to be made in and around how our complete curriculum works. And I get that, but there's so much that we can do in an active way. You know, you look at some of the physical activity that can be embedded within active maths sessions, active literacy sessions, and trying to embed that approach in your daily curriculum is a way of pulling that all together. But we understand there's more. We understand there's other things, but I do feel that at this moment, yeah, you're right. It is a mindset shift, and it needs to be that. We all know if I wake up in the morning and I'm not feeling great, I'm not feeling in my best mood, whether I'm teaching a PE session or whatever I'm teaching to whoever I'm teaching it, if I take that with me, it's going to be a negative, right? And I'm going to roll that out. If I turn up, and we have to be, right, as educators, and I think that's where, especially with working with the younger pupils, you have to put on that show, right? You have to be the example.
You're a performer, aren't you, with the key stage one? It's a show.
Of course you are. And, you know, you have to, you know, especially a lot of the stuff that I like to do, especially with the younger pupils, is all about the context. So, you know, we'll be jugglers at the circus, or we'll be lions, and we'll be tigers in the jungle, that type of stuff. And, of course, trickier from a distance. I appreciate that. You know, you can't growl and get your claws out as well when you're in the jungle from a distance. But as soon as you put that positive into things, I do feel that makes a massive difference to our young people. And you know, I deal with schools that are, you know, varied, very, very varied in their intake of their pupils, from less economically positive situations to quite affluent areas, and the difference in mindset and experience needs to be no different. These young people want to come to school and want to enjoy their experience, right? Whatever they've come from, whatever their morning, their afternoon, their evening before looks like, they want to enjoy that. And I think, it gives our subject an opportunity to enhance that well-being mentally of our young people. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's really important what you say there about that different, coming from different backgrounds. One of the schools I work in regularly is in a very deprived area of Leeds, and I think you look at think of that necessarily what they're going home to. That hour they've got with you doing PE could actually be the highlight of their week, you know, and that's a really sad thought, and but it is, ultimately it is, you don't know what they're going back to, what their home life's like, and I think that using PE from that, and just recognising the importance of giving them that hour, 2 hours to have fun and to learn purpose, like we said at the start. I think we can't undervalue, really, and underestimate the importance of that as PE teachers and as teachers in general, really, I suppose.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's where, you know, you can look at all of those huge benefits, and that if you're in a school situation that either yourself or someone else is questioning the time that should be given to PE or physical activity, I think they're the type of things that need to be jogging your memory and saying, actually, it isn't just about getting kids running around and moving. Yes, of course, that's a big part of it. We want our young people to be physically active for the right reasons, but actually the experience that we're enabling our young people to have in that setting is huge, right? It's such a great opportunity. So yeah, but I get within this tricky time, I get within all the regulations and rules, can I do this, can I do that? There are some challenges that are in place, but we need to ask the questions, but we need to try and make things happen rather than put up the barriers. And I from my experiences, that's what I'm seeing. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, rather than the opposite. So I think, you know, I think we hear parents talk, we hear other people maybe outside of schools having these conversations, that you hear one negative and that story spreads like wildfire.
It does, doesn't it? Bad stories spread a lot quicker than a nice story.
Yeah, so, but don't focus on that, because of, you know, I challenge anyone to go and really figure out what's going on in a couple of different schools. It'll give you a decent snapshot of more often than not, people are embracing this time in the real positive, and being, you know, I think we used that word at the start, giving children an opportunity to reignite their enjoyment or reinvigorate that time, and giving them an opportunity to reintegrate in school life, because of that social aspect. For me, huge. When it was lockdown, I was, you know, a text message, a WhatsApp call and a Zoom is fine. It's fine, but it doesn't beat the face-to-face, even at a distance, right? It doesn't beat that face-to-face. And I think all of our young people, I saw a really interesting video actually that Active Essex put out. They were doing a skipping challenge recently across the county, and it was a young girl on that really stating exactly that in better words than I could ever put it. Something along the lines of, although I can't be that close to my friends, it's much better than not seeing them at all. And I think, you know, as much as we can look aside and see what the negatives can be around this time, that's a huge positive, right? That's a massive thing.
Definitely. I think over lockdown as well, like you said, we all, from a social aspect of it, I didn't realise I missed my friends as much as I did. I didn't know I liked them that much, but then lockdown happened and you couldn't see people and you couldn't go into work, and then it was like...
I'm really pleased you're saying this now, Tom.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased you're saying that.
Yeah. It's the nicest thing I've said to him in the last 15 years I've known him, but
I think it does that, doesn't it? It gave everyone an opportunity to sit back and just take stock and really look at what was in front of them, right? And you did start to create some sort of hierarchy in your mind of what really was integral to you, what made you tick, what was important for your life. And I do think our young people can't verbalize that as well.
Yeah.
So I do think we need to look at this time. And I think I was having a conversation last week and we kept talking about, well, what has this COVID time taught us? And if it's teaching us things, then we need to embrace it. And if it's teaching us that our young people may have struggled with the social aspects, then let's try and create opportunities to get them to socialise. So team building activities in OAA, for example, within physical education, give our young people an opportunity to do that. They don't need to be on top of one another and touching one another. Yeah. They don't need to have masses of equipment, but they give the opportunity to do that type of thing. And I think it was the Youth Sport Trust that put out some really interesting documentation in and around that as a vehicle, using some of these type of some of these units as a vehicle. Fitness, for example, saying that, you know, the physical fitness of our young people may have decreased, and using things like fitness circuits, fundamental activities, develop that. But even the fluency of some of our young people's physical movements, like their balance and their coordination, you can't take that for granted. That just like your mathematical skills and just like your writing skills may have dropped.
Definitely.
It may have been enhanced if you've had a wonderful experience, but may have dropped. Then it is our job to support with that. And I think I'm hearing this lots in schools at the moment about recovery curriculum and recovery within other areas. I've not heard it much in PE.
No.
I've not heard it mentioned much in PE, but I think that comes back down to maybe we as a subject area have maybe not always been assessed particularly well by individuals, but that's fine. I've never had a real issue with that as long as it's being done well. But I do feel if now we're at a point where we're recovering, if that feels necessary in your setting, then I do think that the physical elements and the social, emotional, cognitive stuff needs to be considered as well. And in our subject area, there are going to be young people that struggle with that, and it's important, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a challenge, isn't it? I mean, I don't know about you, Anthony, but I've enjoyed planning new lessons. I think sometimes when you go into the similar schools and you've got some of the year groups, you might get stuck in that, you know what you're doing. You're doing year 4 invasion games, week 4, you know what that lesson looks like. But actually to have to rethink your own plan and your own deliveries, it's been something I've actually quite enjoyed, if I'm honest. And
I agree with you, Tom. I work a lot in team teaching with teachers at the moment. So around about a day and a half of my week is working alongside a teacher and working within their skill base to develop some of those type of skills. And I would put my hand in the air and say sometimes teachers and any practitioner can rest on a plan and rest on a process that's already in place, but actually to be wholly critical of what you're going to deliver and really thoughtful of what you're going to deliver, you need challenges.
Yeah.
You need challenges. And as soon as you're in a place where you feel you're going through the mill, just doing the same old thing, is a place you're not being challenged, right? So if we're in this situation, then I was working with an NQT year 5 teacher on Monday this week, and it was her very first time delivering anything formally in PE. So we did it as a team teaching session. We were working on football as our unit. It was working on skills. We had 30 pupils, not enough footballs. We had to be at a distance. We had a slightly damp playground, not a field. all challenges, but for her, she really gave it an excellent go because she had to think in that lesson prior to it of those challenges in place, and she adapted things. Her groupings were really well thought out. Her decision making in terms of when she delivered feedback was well thought out. And I think lots of these things are there as a product of the challenge that's in front of you, right? You know, we all probably pretend to ourselves that we want an easy life, don't we?
No, but we don't really.
Life. You know, there's no such thing as a 9 to 5, or some of my friends see it as a 9 to 3 for schools. There's no such thing, right? But we do want that challenge. I think we need that challenge to keep ourselves on our toes. And if you don't, then you're in the wrong business, right? You probably need to question it yourself if you don't. If you're sitting there listening to this thinking, no, that's not for me, then maybe you need a reconsideration yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think we spoke about quite a few of them though, but you do a lot of training with you know, NQTs and people on their teacher training. What are some of the barriers you see then to delivery really? I mean, you said at the start about you line them all up and you've got the sporty students who are, you know, I've got experiences. Those who maybe are reluctant to get involved with people, what are some of the reasons do you think behind that?
I think it's experience. A lot of people, it's experience or lack of. And that isn't said in a judgmental way or a negative way whatsoever. If you were to flip this around and put me in the scenario and say, give me music. Yeah. My then experience of it may be positive or negative, depending on when was my last experience of teaching it, when was my last experience of being taught it. So for lots of maybe newly qualified or recently qualified teachers, or those going through their training, their most recent experience more often than not is at secondary school. The experience that was then given, positive or otherwise, can directly influence. And I really try and drill that in, that actually we're in a position now of huge influence, of huge importance. And we mentioned slightly earlier that we do need to perform. We do need to sometimes put on a brave face when it's not right. And you've got to give yourself an opportunity to give it a go and believe in it. But you will only get better through experience. And that's where, unfortunately, in some settings, people are put in a situation where their timetable decreases their amount of PE they could ever be exposed to teaching or being involved in. But hopefully in more and more settings now, we're seeing that being used as a model where not younger necessarily, but newly qualified or recently qualified members of staff can have more time being taught. So I think if you throw yourself into it, you'll find your way. And I think a lot of people look at the stereotype and say, my experience was negative at secondary school, possibly. This is my example. Negative at secondary school because I wasn't particularly strong at it. Therefore, I didn't flourish. Therefore, I wasn't enjoying the experience. And then we've got to relook at it and think, okay, 10 years, 15 years later, we're in a different world. We're in a different world that values different things and values, as we mentioned earlier, that holistic approach to physical education. And I do find more often than not that if you've got someone that is struggling with their mindset towards delivery, the way in can often be through the social, through the emotional, through the thinking processes that are involved in that. So even if I often say that the physical is often the default within your session, so it is often there by its very nature. Whether we share the learning objective, we are developing underarm throwing techniques or whatever, whether you share that, whether you explicitly work on it, that is often by the very nature of your session.
Going to be involved in it, yeah.
Whereas the social, the emotional, and lots of people do value that. If you are going into this as a career path, you value the well-being of young people, you value the development of young people, and that social experience or the emotional skills, that personal development that you can really, really work on with young people. I think in no better subject than PE, then that's your area to focus on. Work on that. Let the other stuff happen naturally. Work on that and embrace that. Develop your young people's leadership skills, develop their social skills within your PE, and let the physical stuff happen a little bit more. Because of that might be your way into it. And yeah, there are vast barriers, aren't there? But I think we can, again, you either look at the negative or the positive, don't you? You've got to do it. You've got to crack on with it. what you're going to do. You're going to sit there with a grumpy face on and
Yeah, I'll get on with it. Yeah.
Crack on with it. Be positive about it. What you're going to get out of it, you're going to get positives from it. If you're positive, you'll get positives from it, right?
It just goes to show, though, the impact we could have. I mean, not necessarily primary, we're talking secondary there. A bad PE lesson or a bad series of PE lessons, it can have a lifelong effect almost. You must see teachers coming through their training who might be mature, who might be a little bit old, still got a negative view of PE because of the experience they had at 15 years old.
Yeah, and this can be, as you say, this could be 10, 20, 30 years later. And that might be their experience. And then suddenly being able to reframe that themselves within a world that does value holistic development is so empowering, is hugely empowering for anyone. And it's exactly that. And I don't want to sound harsh here, but if you do look at the delivery, whatever subject area is, and you think, I can't do that, then if you can't find the social element, the emotional, the thinking elements in it that you're going to embrace, then you're probably in the wrong job. You're probably not following the right pathway. You've got to find it, because if they're the things that, as a parent, certainly they're the things I value above everything else. I'd love to have the country's top physical education delivering PE sessions to my boys who are in primary school at the moment. But you know what? I'd be more than happy with someone who's not got a basis of qualifications coming out of their ears, but values social development, values emotional development, and I would more than happily kind of embrace that journey as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I think you said it right at the very start about, you're only going to learn and you're going to get better by doing it. I mean, you can read and you can do all the courses and all the things in the world, but ultimately, there's nothing prepares you for standing in front of a class of 30 on the field and you're doing actual PE lessons. Nothing can prepare you or develop you more than just doing it, I guess. And I think, like you say, if it's not valued in the school and teachers not getting opportunities to deliver their own PE or to team teach, then it's never going to improve. It's never going to.
And we're in a world at the moment with primary PE sport premium funding, which is hugely advantageous to the sector. But there's always ways of doing things that can influence positive and negative, right? So embracing really meaningful CPD, which is hands-on, which is developmental, which is week by week, which is lesson by lesson. That for me is hugely powerful and impactful. So when you're looking at using someone as a specialist to support a team of teachers in developing their skill set, that's great. The flip side, when that funding is sitting there or being used in a not particularly well thought out manner, then we are in a place where actually the impact on our young people is going to eventually tell, isn't it? That we are going to have more and more teachers that are not feeling positive about it, but we've got an opportunity with that funding to do something about it, right? And like you say, a course is great, and I'm a huge advocate of going and developing yourself, definitely, but you've got to find your way that works for you, right? I'm a kind of very hands-on, a very visual person. I need to see it and I need to do it. And I think most people within education are similar.
Yeah, there we are. So, as you were saying there, Anthony, touching on the sports premium and some good examples you've seen, then I think you mentioned about things that you won't necessarily know this premium could be spent on, but has impacted young people.
Yeah, I think there's a danger, isn't there, of looking at black and white text on a piece of paper and saying that, or online and saying that I can spend it on this and I can't spend it on that. I think that there needs to be power within the school to actually look at projects that are impactful long term, that aren't just going to be something that you've heard work elsewhere. It needs to be really much driven by what goes on within your school setting. And I think especially now, especially after having many young people with a huge gap in their learning or a gap in their social experiences, trying to restructure our thought process on that. So we've seen across the county, as I said earlier, areas that have thought about the need in their setting, things like tranquil gardens, sensory areas, things like that have been have been ways of spending that money that may have pushed out a significant amount of it, but over a long-term period have given our young people an opportunity to utilize those finances to support them with anxiety, with their well-being wholly, and even not just with integration in PE lessons, with integration within that whole school life. So things like that are a huge advantage with the primary pre-sport premium. I do think if you were to look on your active partnership websites, you'd probably see several case studies that are maybe more generic, looking at things like Daily Mile, looking at things like developing CPD, which are all wonderful things done in the right way, of course. But actually, there will be, I'm sure, several examples that tick those health routes, and there's a school that I can think of as well locally that utilize a coaching company that come in on a Saturday and a Sunday that work with some of their vulnerable pupils, and they have a coaching academy that works specifically with those young people that maybe have difficulty in accessing funds, or maybe they have issues family wise to get them there, and they support them in that process. And that is a
great way to spend that money wonderful. On. Like we said at the very start about experiences, what an experience them children who, like say, might not have the access to go to a Saturday morning football club, but can go into school on a Saturday, Sunday morning and receive good quality coaching.
Exactly. And I think, it's being able to be thoughtful and share that information with people that actually do make a difference within your school, and be really honest with yourselves. I think, we can make a decision, come up with a great idea on our own, but actually when we start to collaborate with people around us, because there are wonderful ideas that float around, but as soon as we've got the backup of staff and the backup of our young people, governors, parents, we start to look at things that actually have much more meaning. So I would always reconsider that, and I would think to myself at the moment, with that underspend that carried through from the last academic year, being really on my toes with the spending of that, because if we look at any of the documentation that's come out about that, be aware that needs to be utilized before the end of March for 2021. So lots of people may have missed that line. So be aware of that underspend needs to go in the right way, needs to be gone, needs to be out of your system.
Spend it, lose it.
And spend it on something meaningful, spend it on something that, lots of schools have come back and are using anecdotal evidence to say our young people maybe needs a bit of social reintegration, or are using data where they are surveying kids and asking them, how do you feel? What would you like? And then they're starting to use their primary pre-sport premium fund to support in that process. So there's lots of great examples around and about there, but it's all about spending it well, isn't it? And that's always the hardest thing, right? It's equipment. It's
tennis balls.
and that's great. We can have we can go to schools and find cupboards full of unused equipment, but long-term impact, I believe it's putting things in place that are meaningful to the setting. Because if I was to come up with an idea for your setting, it may be very, very different to my setting. So it's got to be really bespoke to the needs of your school. And also a big one for me is invest in people, right? Invest in the people that are there and that are going to make a long-term difference. Because of when we do look at longevity and we do look at impact, then the biggest impact comes from the processes that are in place that people can influence. And often over a long term, they don't need to cost a penny. They do not need to cost a thing. When you've got people you're employing right and you are supporting people along their professional development journey correctly, then it doesn't need to cost anymore. As much as we all possibly want a bit of a pay rise, I don't know if the primary sport premium is going to necessarily support with that, but we certainly can develop our people, our staff in front of us to make sure that the experiences are of a good quality.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you touched on there about what I can implement in my school might be perfect and work and be a great example, but I come and do that in your school, it just doesn't work, and it needs to be bespoke to your individual children, your classes, your teachers, your environment, and find out what works for you and spend that money wise and not replicating what the school down the road has done and works.
And look at what I would always say as well, look at what's come before, because of often we've seen before that things work in cycles, and you may have had a similar project running 3 years ago before your time at the school, and probably if it's not been successful then, it may not be successful now. does it need rebranding? Does it need rethinking? Does it need reconsidering? And again, I think the best idea in the world doesn't come from one person. The most impactful, meaningful ideas come from a real thoughtful, collaborative process. So I do think involving as many people in that decision-making process is vital.
Yeah, definitely, especially because it is a whole school approach, and the PE is affecting every single class. And speaking, like you say, to parents, to children, find what do they want? What are they wanting from their PE and school sport, and then making decisions off the back of that information.
Yeah, and reaching out, I would say, to trusted organisations, because as much as this is a time that there are finances around, be aware that organisations will maybe not have the best interest of every school at heart. Yeah. Consider what you think is going to be useful for your school, and then find a trusted organisation that you're happy to work with, because we work better when there's more of us, and we can work in collaboration. There's some great examples of local sports partnerships that are hugely successful, but some schools are unfortunately not in those areas with wonderful partnerships, and they've got to then work on their own. But multi-academy trusts and trust groups are ways to say, actually, should we build a little bit of an organisation ourselves and make this work? Can we put some of our money in a pot and work something out together? That's a really good way of working, rather than being out there on your own, because it can feel like that sometimes, but it does need that opportunity to sit back, like we talked about lockdown, sit down, look at it, think about it. What do I need to do with this? Is it worth having a conversation elsewhere? Because with the best will in the world, and with everything we've got to juggle in a school setting, that those decisions will not be made correctly unless we engage with as many people as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And I had a conversation just yesterday, actually, and I think PE, maybe more so than most other subjects, has got so much support out there as well. Even, not just the county partnership and things like that, but social media, AFP, YST, have all got so much support who will help you make them decisions and help you spend that money wisely.
You're so right, Tom. And it doesn't need to cost a penny, does it? Again, it doesn't need to
website has got so much information on there that, I feel like is underutilized still by many schools.
It's so right. And I think when you are, and I've been there myself, when you are full-time in class, maths, English, phonics, juggling everything around, get home, kids to deal with, that I understand sometimes you're doing things on knee-jerk reactions, you're doing things quickly, but yeah, having an awareness of what is around you and having networks to support with groups are hugely influential. As you say, the Youth Sport Trust, AFP are wonderful organisations to work with, and to engage in that correct information and opportunity to share. So yeah, I make you right there, Tom.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean, just as we finish off then now, I think we touched on it a little bit before about the future of the premium and whether that will stay as a spot of the PE and school sport premium, or whether it'll move more to a health premium. I mean, we don't know, but I think for me, I'd like to see it be branded more as a health premium and focus on the wider benefits of the wider, not just PE, I suppose. I mean, what do you think about all the future of the premium?
Yeah, I think, year on year we sit there, don't we, and we wait. And this year more than others, we waited that little bit longer.
Last minute, wasn't it?
A little bit, but then every other decision seemed to be a little bit last minute, didn't it? So
they had quite a lot on the plate, to be fair to government.
They did. I'm not being judgmental. They were juggling up a lot, as much as that. I just made reference to juggling everything else in a class last day. I can only imagine it was challenging, but I think year on year we wait on that, don't we? And I think the more we wait and the more concerned we are is probably telling us something about how necessary these finances are for us. And I almost think that continuous year-long wait is either something that we're just going to get used to for a couple of years, or is something that needs scrapping and just needs filtering through from a different angle. As you say, health is what it's all about, isn't it? Whether this is primary PE, school sport, this come after the 2012 Olympics, right? It come after, let's actually make a difference. Let's have longevity. Let's have a sustainable impact for our country after 2012. But we we'll see that in certain pockets, but I do think we are in a different place now. What, 8 years on from that, you know, who would have known the challenges that everything that people have gone through up until then? But looking at things now, yes, we should be more geared towards health. It should be more about challenging the norms that were in the past in our school setting and making sure that things are delivered correctly long term. But I still believe that money is vital. That money is hugely important for schools. And if it was to just drop, as much as we have always had this message that we want it to be long-term impact, and how's that going to be sustainable, as much as that has always been a key message, realistically, how are we going to maintain that with the amount of finances that are being put in there? So I do think that needs to be maintained for us to make sure that our young people get the best offer possible.
Yeah, definitely. I think I completely agree. If it did get pulled, how many schools would be able to maintain? Well, they won't be able to maintain the current offering. It just won't be possible. And I think that just ultimately have a negative impact on young people, and it would be at the detriment of them.
Yeah, and I think if you were to pick the schools that were able to maintain it, then probably what you will find in a trend is people do it off their own back, and because of it's just the culture of the school. You will walk into one school against another, and you will know the culture of the school within half an hour. I walk into so many settings, and I see. And certainly now it's a little bit more challenging, but you can see teachers delivering clubs. You can then see organisations then coming in to then deliver those clubs. And I think things like that send a message to young people. And as much as I'm a true believer in specialist supporting, I feel like if you're going to have a long-term impact, it's the people that are there that are always going to do it. And that's why investing in those people is hugely vital, right? And looking at things that are going to be really meaningful for them going forwards.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I had a conversation the other day about the investment in the CPD for teachers. I mean, maybe it's gone too late, but should that be invested into the initial training? Should there be more support there around PE? So get it at the source, and then when teachers are going out into settings, then they've already had that CPD, they've already got that.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Tom, because of you're seeing such a disparity in an initial teacher training program from one to another. You will see half a day given, you'll see a couple of hours given, you'll see a number of days given, but I haven't seen much more than that unless there's specialist routes that are being taken. So yeah, I think it tells you something as well, doesn't it? That as a trainee tells you the value when you're looking at the subject, right? You know, it equates the time that people believe should be given to the subject. So yeah, I think that's been a long-term issue that's been there for a good while now. So yeah, I think trying to do things in and around that would certainly support. And people are, with their sport premium money, people are utilising that to support within their MATs and within their teaching school alliances to support the delivery of that, because it's going to make an impact long term.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's cost effective, isn't it, long term, as opposed to, you know, train someone now for next year, 2 years, and I'm not paying for coaches for the next 5-6 years. It financially makes sense for the school as well. In a time when who knows what budget's going to be like. You know, the government have got all this, you know, money to pay back school. Yeah. Historically, education's been hit. So whether that trend will change, who knows? But yeah, we can live in hope, I suppose.
as always.
Yeah. Well. Thank you so much for that, Anthony. Really enjoyed chatting to you today, and I'm sure we've covered lots of topics, and hopefully people listening have got food for thought and have learned something new.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It's been really good to be part of it, and yeah, I hope everyone's keeping well, and I hope everyone's trying to embrace the change, right? Using it, and I think I said that at the start. I think platforms, not barriers here. I think, you know. Yeah. Really be the salesperson for our subject. Really be the model to push it forward, I think.